Hey guys, welcome back. Let's get started with the broader overview of the market, and then we can go through some of the plays for this week, right? You can see that we have been chopping, for the past week after the massive move we had, right? How much did we fail? After almost falling 8% on the indexes, we've kind of been in this range from 4,400 to like 420, 4270. You can see we've just been up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So I think after a week of, just digesting the price action downwards, we've kind of been sideways. It's time for the markets to, kind of decide which way it wants to flip. So as usual, they're always bull and bear scenarios. So let's get started, right? You can see that right now, pre-market, right? The market has given up most of its gains from the overnight futures, and we're hovering pretty much over the trend line that's been acting as resistance, right? So this is still a bear case that we've kind of been watching for a while now, right? So in this, we assume that this was an ABC, right? In a wave two, and we have a massive wave three sell-off. So that would imply we actually have a Black Monday. Not really a Black Monday, but yeah, a pretty aggressive sell today into the week, right? Because this discount pretty much takes us below 4,000. So this is the bear version that has been working so far. So as usual, I'm just going through both the bear version. Again, this necessarily doesn't have to happen, right? There is a short-term bull count where, again, if we break over the high of 4443, then this count becomes valid, right? Because it would break over that area of resistance that's been holding it back, right? And we push higher. I'd say at least to, there was a gap, like let's go to SPY. You can see the gap more clearly, right? Let's go to the daily chart. You can see that there is a gap at 461. So we could easily, go up to fill that gap. But as I mentioned, that's the bull count, right? I don't have an opinion as of now, right? I'm fine either way it breaks, but I am going to have to, kind of favor the bears a little bit because they've had the upper hand through it all, right? And Spot Gamma says there is a reduction in negative gamma, so that would help the bulls push it higher if the bulls are able to show up. So I think just watch to see 1 hour and the cash open to see which way it flips. The levels are clear, right? If we break this high at 4443, to be honest, this is where I put my bull trigger, right? 4474. If we break 4474, then it's a clear shot at 4624 and higher, right? Or if we break back into this wedge, right? Let's say we break the low of 430, 4371, then it becomes very clear that the bears have the upper hand because I don't think the bulls can chop anymore and push us higher. So at this point, right, we are in an indecisive situation. So, waiting 1 hour to see which way the direction breaks is obviously the wisest move, right? And most of the charts, right, they're going to follow which way the index move. So that's the reason. Let's go through, the plays for this week. That's the reason I only have a few plays because I'm honestly waiting to see which way the index breaks, because whichever way it breaks, that's how most of the stocks, that's the direction they're going to move. So it shouldn't be too hard to pick between calls or puts. But yeah, let's go through some of the plays I have, right? The first one is LVS. You can see on the daily chart that we've hit the bottom of this channel. You can see we have, let me go to a weekly time frame. The daily does not seem to show you the whole picture, right? You can see 2008 crash, we went all the way back, but ever since then, right, we've never made a new high. The high was 146 and the most recent high was 87 in December 2013. We've just been making a series of lower high, lower high, lower high, and lower high, which is why, you guys can see that this area at 35 has actually been long-term support, right? So what I'm looking at, right, just based on my wave count, is I think it is going to break the support. Again, wave two doesn't have to stall here. To be honest, it can go a little more higher. So you could, just wait for it to break 41 to make sure this bear count is valid. Or to be honest, you can just set your alerts below 34, because the minute it breaks this long-term, 10-year support at 34, it's going to free fall lower. So you have two options, right? You can start scaling into puts out here, right, to play this move downwards, because as I mentioned, it's been making a series of lower highs, right? It's only a matter of time before it makes another lower high, right? Just as Walmart. This is a very similar chart to Walmart, but Walmart was obviously on a lower time frame, right? We played this last week, And you saw the kind of sell-off Walmart had, right? I mentioned how Walmart kept making a series of lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. And after it made that high, it did ask for a boomer stock. Dying 10% is a big deal, guys. This was a solid play, right? Same structure that I see on Walmart, I see on LVS as well, right? Obviously, please buy yourself some time in the scenario because as I mentioned, wave two can go a little higher all the way to 50 if it wants, right? So if you have any short-term puts, they can get destroyed. But here, another reason I think this is a good area to start scaling in is because it did reject the area of previous resistance, right? So again, confirmation would be, again, you can just wait for it to break 41.3 and then, it would head straight for this gap fill at 39.4, right? That's scenario number one. It does have, oh, it already had earnings, 26 Jan. So that's out of the way, right? It pushed higher on earnings. So if it breaks 41.3, it will come fill this gap, right? And then that would give discount more probability, or right, the higher it goes, right? If you buy puts 3 months out, right, you can start scaling into this. So that's why I have LVS, right? That's my first play. It is on a more longer time frame. So, just watch. Either it breaks this gap full and you can play shorter term puts, right? Or if it breaks this resistance, you can play short-term calls and scale into longer-term puts. So that's what I wanted to discuss for LVS, right? The next one is Apple. So for Apple, right, I do have this going higher in a wave B. It did break out of this flat, right, upwards, and it is down pre-market. But here's the thing. I do have Apple coming down for a wave C, but that again depends on the broader market, right? If the short-term bull counts play out, Apple would be one of, especially after its earnings, Apple would be one of the first stocks to, push higher. So I'll put it this way. If Apple, that's why, I have puts below 168.52 because that would, break it back into this flag and that would be a higher confirmation, right? So if you wanted to call trigger, I'd say wait for it to break 172. If it breaks 172, then Apple can go to 176 and 180.6 respectively, right? So those are your bull and bear trigger for Apple, depending on which way the market breaks. Apple is going to break lower, right? As I mentioned, I'm a bear at heart, so obviously I'm going to favor the bears, but that doesn't mean, it can't break bullishly. So that's my take on Apple, right? I have it going down for a wave C. If this bear count that we've been watching plays out this time, right, guys, then Apple definitely is going to have a hard ass fall, right? So again, if this bull count plays out, then Apple likely will take the market much, much higher. So this is the reason I have Apple on there. As I mentioned, most of the plays this week, they can go either way, right? So wait for them to trigger. Let's look at crowd. Crowd, however, for me, okay, the way I see it, again, it has been in a chop, right? But it is very oversold. So the chances for it to play out a short-term wave for higher are pretty high as well. So that's why I have, if it can break this high at 171.26, then I think it, stands a shot at hitting 177 and then, 182 and 186 respectively. So wait for, as I mentioned, right, you have to wait for them to break triggers. You can't front run them this week because you can see it has been in a chop. Crowd can just as easily, right? It can have a contracted wave C, put in a wave 4 here and have a sell off. So you don't want to get caught in the sell off, right? You'd rather wait for it to break this resistance and then, play them to the points higher. So that's why I have crowd on this week's watch list. I do think it is oversold and it could, pump higher. So again, if the bull count plays out, the crowd should be one of the first stocks, into which money will pour in and it can likely, shoot up. So that's why I have crowd on there, right? Let's look at mRNA. mRNA, again, I do have a more bullish count, but again, that doesn't mean, as I mentioned, if the market is going to sell off, then all of these will break, these key levels and go down. So for mRNA, again, wait for the trigger, right? If mRNA can break 165, then it stands a nice shot at going to 177, right? A 7% move is a decent, I have 2 to 3 week time frame on this. So as long as mRNA can break this trigger, I can definitely see go to 177 and 177 breaks. then it can go to 190, but again, if you want the bear levels, right, if mRNA breaks 153, then it's going to break this low 137 and then, go to $100, right? Ultimately, I do think 126, $90 is possible on mRNA, but you have to wait for the bull or bear triggers, right? So again, the bull trigger is 168, the bear trigger is 152. Watch to see which way it flips, and then you can take an entry based on that. The next one is Chewy, right? So for Chewy, what I see that, right, it was in this kind of rising upward flag. It broke down. You can see it went to retest this flag. So if Chewy breaks 43.79, then the next level is 42. Then it will definitely come to 40. And if my chart is right, then it probably makes a new low at 35, right? So that's what I have for Chewy. So that's the bear count. The bull count is if it can break the high of 46, then it has a direct shot at hitting 48.28, and then it can hit $50 and higher. So that's if the bull count plays out. Again, wait for your levels to break and you can take an entry based on how it goes. So the last one I have is Wix. The reason I want to discuss Wix is you can see, right, this has been my long-term trend line all the way from 2018. Every time we've hit this trend line, we bounce. And you can see ever since the COVID crash, Wix high, we've been making a series of lower lows. And you can see every time we broke out, it's been a false break. But this time, right, we broke out, we failed, but we hit this trend line, right? You could think of this as just retesting this area before it went higher. And now we've, this is you should generally not wave Wix, right? It's not very accurate, but if I had to wave it, this is honestly consolidating for a wave 4. Most of the indexes and most of the charts, right, this kind of sideways chop that we've been seeing, right? When you see sideways action like this, it's generally indicative of a wave 4. So the fact that Wix is in a wave 4, right, and the markets are in a wave 4, that for wave 5 lower, that's kind of the reason I am leaning towards the bear count. It's because the Wix is kind of flashing. If Wix breaks this low at 27, then I'd have to start supporting this short-term bull count a lot more, but Wix has not sold off a lot. So that kind of, puts Wix, targets at 35, 45, right? If that's the case, the market is, this bear count that I have definitely kind of play out. So that's kind of the reason I am leaning more bearish than I'm leaning bullish. But again, I told you guys the market is in a very indecisive point right now. So, waiting for a few hours to see which direction it breaks could honestly be a lot more profitable. So those are, oh, I do have one more, right? I have BBBY. I didn't notice I had fourth setup. So this is honestly what I have for Bed Bath and Beyond, right? You can see that it rejected this previous area of resistance at 1621, right? So I do have calls and puts, right? I said that if it breaks this high, right, at 16.2, then it can go to 18 and 20 respectively. But if this area of resistance proves to be a wave 4 resistance level, then when it breaks 15.2, you are going to see 13 and $10. So those are your bull and bear pivots, right? So these are all the plays for this week. So let's look and see, how the plays last week did, right? Okay, I do give plays, during the day as well under Wolf's Den. So if you're part of premium, you'll be able to access those. So let's go through last week's plays and see how we did. So AMD, right, although it did bounce from this bottom, right, from this 108 for a 10% move, it did, it's not a win, right? It did have a massive sell-off all the way to 100. So that's definitely a play that didn't work out. I'm sorry for that, right? So even now, AMD, again, if this bull count plays out, then this right here is the AMD bottom, right? And this 134, 150 target that I had last week, still stands, right? But again, as I mentioned, the Wix is looking very bullish, guys. So please wait for confirmation, because if the bear chart plays out, right, then I'd have to move this. Hold on. This would be your, I hope this happens. Too many lines. This would be your wave 3, right? This is your wave 4 before we have a sell-off for wave 5, right? Same as the index. AMD would follow the index precisely. It does have earnings though, so I wouldn't I wouldn't 100% say AMD is gonna follow the index because it is, I'll put it this way, right? This is where your wave A ended, right? This is your, hold on. I'll show you both the bull and bear counts, right? Because it has earnings this week. I'll show you both the bull and bear counts. All right. This is your wave A. You can see that this is your A, this is your B, and the C did break the 1.618 target. So it is pushing into more bear counts, right? But as I mentioned, this is an area of previous support, right? This is where 4 ended. So for wave 8 to end here and for AMD to push higher, at least to 140, 145, right, is not unreasonable into earnings, right? But that's just the bull count. Let me show you the bear version if that happens. Just because it broke the 1.618, and this is generally your 3, right? We push higher for a 4, and then we sell off for a 5, right? In 86 before a bigger ABC. This is what the bear count for AMD, looks like. So I wouldn't, just blindly play calls into AMD earnings because the chances for it to just pump till earnings and sell off is still pretty high. But anyway, I just wanted to go through AMD. I wanted to show you what the bull, this is the bull if the market as a whole pumps out the bull count, then the chances of AMD actually making this move is very, very, very high, right? But if the market fails and plays out this short-term bear count that I have, right, then AMD chart becomes really iffy. That doesn't mean, but as I mentioned, like it can do really well on earnings and certainly play out this count, even if that market as a whole is going down, it's certainly possible. But the probabilities that you're playing diminishes. So be careful. That's why I wanted to touch on AMD. Let's look at XFAB, right? We said enter 45 to 42. Target is 38, 34, right? How did XFAB play out, guys? We played the week before. We had a nice move. Now you can see it broke this area of support, right? 40.40, and it dumped all the way to 30. So that's a solid, where is it? 42 is here. That's a solid 27% return, guys. So this was a banger of a play. If you had puts, right? Again, Lucid was the other play we had last week. How did it work out? We said 38 to 41, right? And we won 34 to 29. How did that play out? Right from this area of support, it dumped 40%. Like this was the EV plays last week were so sexy. I really hope, you guys, were able to, take advantage of that, be part of the play. Let's look at Walmart, right? Walmart, we said 130 to 140 was our entry. And what did Walmart do? It had a nice dump, right? 5-6% move on Walmart is honestly for a boomer stock like Walmart is pretty good. For me, I still have Walmart. As I mentioned, been making a series of higher lows. It did break this flag it's in, right? So it could go to retest before it sells off, or this is where it rejects and it's going to sell off. But what I'm trying to sell you is any pump Walmart has, if you have 1 to 2 months of time, it will continue selling off, right? So, but 3 banger plays, right? Baba definitely didn't hold a low, right? Right, it couldn't hold 113. It did go a lot lower. So personally, I personally don't think the bull count for Baba will play out because this is a really deep retracement, right? If you want to be a bull on Baba, I just wait for it to break 133 because if it breaks 133, then it has room to 180, right? So you still have a $50 move, just waiting to see what happens, right? It could, just continue to chop in this range and that would prove that it is a way forward. So Baba definitely didn't hold a low at all. Shop did work out intraday because I remember seeing the trade, right? I said when it broke 167, it would, it has room to 976, right? So you can see what happened, right? This was where we were when I posted the play, right? We broke 869. We went close, right? We went all the way to 945. We didn't go to 976, but the minute it broke this pivot, it definitely had a solid $70 bounce, right? An 8% move. Again, it's not really a win, right? Because it's still chopping this range, but for the short-term move I was looking for, that definitely played out. So when you wait for triggers to happen, the moves tend to happen a lot more quickly. Again, shop, again, it did have a really deep retracement, so the chances for it to do this are a lot less probable, right? Before it sells off. But again, if the short-term bull count plays out, right, they could have just trapped all the bears before they push it all the way to 1,000. So it's not improbable, right? So let's see what happened. Nike, we had both bull and bear triggers, right? It looks like it's just been chopping. Nike did absolutely nothing worthwhile, right? So the same triggers from last week still exist for Nike, right? All right, guys. So I just wanted to go through last week's place, this week's place, kind of see what's happening, with the market. Right now, we are still consolidating over that area that's been acting as resistance. So just watch to see which way we go. Thank you so much, right? I'll see you guys tomorrow.